In the library, after her senpai finished teaching her about her committee duties, he told her to feel free to ask about anything she didn't understand. The girl, Shiranui Rei, thoughtfully repeated his words in her mind. Anything. Holding a book titled Mysteries of the World, Shiranui thinks back on that day, wondering if that conversation was the start of it all. The story begins with Chapter 1, Senpai and Shiranui-san. In a school hallway, Shiranui shyly calls out to her senior, asking if he has a moment. Senpai recognizes her and asks how he can help. This is Shiranui Rei-san, his junior, who is on the same library committee. She tells him there's something she wants to ask. With a completely earnest expression, Shiranui asks him what it means to be a virgin. Her senpai is left completely speechless and shocked. Senpai recalls the rumors he's heard about her. Shiranui is apparently a sheltered young lady from a rich family who was barely allowed outside and had little schooling before enrolling here. Because of her sheltered life, Shiranui knows almost nothing about the world, which makes her direct question especially troublesome for her senpai. She grabs his sleeve to get his attention. Senpai thinks her question is too profound, but he's also flustered by how close she is. Shiranui, the very personification of curiosity, gets even closer and says she wants to know. Shiranui explains that she heard the word from some boys in her class. One of them was dramatically shouting that he wanted to graduate from being a virgin, which made her curious. Looking at him with wide, innocent eyes, Shiranui asks if he is a virgin too. Senpai is horrified that she would say such a word so loudly in public, especially when other female students are nearby and listening in. Despite how ridiculous the question is, Senpai feels a sense of responsibility. For the sake of his adorable junior, he decides he has to take the plunge and answer her. He starts with a poetic, abstract definition, saying a virgin is a man who dreams of things out of reach, but continues living in hope. Naturally, Shiranui doesn't understand and asks him to explain it in simpler terms. Now in an empty classroom to avoid being overheard, Senpai tells her that it's actually quite simple. Both of them sit at desks, ready for the explanation. He explains that it refers to men who haven't had any experience with sexual intercourse. Shiranui slowly repeats the last two words, clearly not understanding what they mean. Senpai realizes she doesn't know what sexual intercourse is either. But just as he points that out, a light bulb seems to go off in Shiranui's head as she remembers something. Suddenly, her face lights up with joy. "You mean sex?" "Right," she exclaims happily. Her senpai is completely baffled as to why she seems so pleased to have figured it out. Shiranui confirms that virgins are just people who haven't had sex. She then starts mimicking the boys from her class, chanting the word sex in a cute, chibi form until her senpai tells her to stop. She then puts her own spin on it, defining virgins as pitiful men who have yet to have any sex. Her senpai, exhausted, can only agree with her sharp assessment. However, the conversation takes another turn. Shiranui asks, "What exactly is sex, senpai?" Realizing she didn't actually know after all, he can only stare in disbelief as she gets close again, full of questions. With startling innocence, Shiranui asks him, "Why don't you have sex with me and graduate from being a virgin?" Senpai immediately and forcefully refuses, but she looks downcast, wondering if she's not good enough. Panicking, he tells her not to start cooking up fantasies. He's just a normal high school boy, and her proposition is too much. All the while, she's imagining lying in bed, waiting for him. Shiranui then asks if he's had sex before. Trying to maintain some composure, he tells her not to just assume he's a virgin without him saying anything. She responds by staring at him intently, making him even more flustered. Trying to explain the gravity of the situation, Senpai tells her that these kinds of things aren't done just to learn more. They are things you do with the person you love. Taking his words literally, Shiranui looks at him sincerely, leaning over his desk, and confesses, "You know, I actually like you, senpai." Her sudden confession leaves him completely flustered and sweating. She asks how much he likes her, and when he can't give a straight answer, she concludes it must be so. He realizes with dismay that she completely misunderstood the kind of deep emotion he was trying to explain. Looking completely drained, Senpai decides to take charge. He tells Shiranui to come with him for a moment. Confused, she asks where they are going as he leads her away. Looking at her with a serious expression, he declares, "I'm going to have you study up on some things." Shiranui just stares back, taking his words at face value. Senpai lets out a sigh of relief as they arrive at their destination, the infirmary. He thinks to himself that because she's so innocent and sheltered, she often asks ridiculous things. At times like these, it's best to leave it to the professionals. He opens the door to the infirmary. Once inside, he turns to her and asks if she understands now. However, Shiranui flinches, clearly intimidated by the unexpected visit to the nurse's office. As they walk away from the infirmary, Shiranui apologizes for asking such a strange question. Senpai tells her not to worry, thinking to himself that with her, this is nothing new. Senpai reflects that things are never boring when she's around. As they walk down the hall, Shiranui says she has one more question for him. She circles back to their previous conversation, asking him directly, "Do you like me, Senpai?" He tries to explain that the like she feels isn't the same romantic like he was talking about, but she innocently confirms that yes, she does like him. He gives another flustered, so answer. To his complete bewilderment, Shiranui seems happy with that, thinking it means his feelings are the same as hers. He can only sigh as she continues to make him worry. Senpai sternly warns her not to ask these kinds of questions to anyone else, worried she'll cause trouble or give people the wrong idea. He makes her promise to only ask him from now on. She readily agrees. But then she asks why, pointing out that it would be much faster to ask classmates or teachers, since they're in different classes and even different school years. Her logical question leaves him speechless. He physically stops her from walking away, trying to find the words to explain his reasoning. Shiranui looks at him, genuinely puzzled. That's a good question. Why do I? Even she doesn't seem to know why she always seeks him out first. With a sudden, shining realization, she asks him, "Senpai, why do I always come to you first?" He can only think, hell if I know. That's what I'd like to ask. He realizes that his junior doesn't even understand herself. Looking at her earnest, confused face, Senpai comes to a resolution. He understands that it's up to him. He will have to be the one to teach her more about the world and herself down the line. After his library committee work, Senpai has to go to his shift at a family restaurant. He reflects on his situation, being poor and having to work multiple part-time jobs. To make matters more complicated, his junior, Shiranui-san, who seems to know nothing about the world, often bombards him with questions. Lost in his thoughts about what he might have to teach her next, Senpai is suddenly found by the very person on his mind. Shiranui gets his attention and asks, "Senpai, do you have a moment?" To his horror, Senpai realizes that Shiranui has followed him into the men's restroom while he was using the urinal. Relieved that he's finished, he turns to her and asks if she even knows where they are, pointing out that even she should know what a bathroom is. Senpai clarifies that they are specifically in the men's bathroom. Shiranui is genuinely shocked to learn that toilets are separated by gender, a concept that has been normal since long before she was born. Afraid to even ask, Senpai confirms that she's never wandered into a men's bathroom before. Her attention is then caught by the urinal, a thing she has never seen before. Senpai advises her to be careful not to make the same mistake in the future. With wide-eyed innocence, Shiranui asks for confirmation. "So I shouldn't be entering the men's bathroom?" Senpai has to spell it out for her. "Of course not. You're a girl, remember?" But that only leads to another question. Shiranui ponders why they even need to separate bathrooms by gender. The question stumps Senpai, who realizes it's simply common sense that he has never questioned before. Still, he knows she shouldn't be in here. Resolving himself, Senpai decides that as her senior, it is his duty to teach her properly, so she understands. He presents her with a hypothetical situation. "Shiranui-san, do you have a moment? If I were to walk in on you while you're on the toilet, what would you think of that?" Shiranui completely misinterprets his example as a perverted request. To his shock, she seems to consider it. Panicked, Senpai tries to backtrack, insisting it was just a harmless example, but the damage is done. As she quietly backs away, he feels even more guilty. Mortified by the misunderstanding, Senpai tries to console himself. He's definitely not crying. It was just a necessary sacrifice for her to learn her lesson. Later, during lunch break, Shiranui finds Senpai again. He's confused about what she wants from him this time. She reminds him that she had something to ask and presents an envelope sealed with a heart sticker, saying, "It's about this." Senpai becomes flustered, thinking it can't possibly be for him. Shiranui says she found it under her desk that morning and guesses that it's probably a love letter. He explains to her the purpose of a love letter. It's a way to confess your feelings to someone when you're too embarrassed to do it face to face. She seems to understand. She then looks at him and asks if he could possibly be the one who wrote it. He immediately denies it. Senpai asks why she hasn't read it yet. Shiranui stares at him blankly, her mind seemingly elsewhere. She explains that she was worried it might be a chain letter. Just as she's about to finally read it, she stops and tells Senpai she has another question for him. Shiranui bluntly asks him, "How do I turn down a confession?" Exasperated, Senpai tells her that maybe she should read it first to at least check the sender's name. The letter is addressed to her, Shiranui Rei-san. As she reads the letter, the sender's poetic words fill the air, describing how his world was suddenly sprinkled with colors the first moment he saw her. The passionate confession continues, with the sender unable to control his beating heart, declaring, "I like you. No, I love you." He then adds that his love means he wants to do all sorts of stuff with her. The letter is from a Kawata Makoto in Class 1C. While Shiranui innocently wonders what doing it a lot means, Senpai immediately understands the sexual implication and thinks the guy needs to be shot down immediately. He clarifies for her that the sender is asking for sexual activity. Shiranui seems genuinely bewildered by the proposition, thinking out loud. "So he wants to go out with me, so that we can have sex?" She seems taken aback, wondering what sort of guy he is. Clearly flustered, she turns to Senpai for answers, asking who this Kawata person is. Annoyed by her cluelessness, Senpai retorts, "How would I know? Isn't he your classmate?" Senpai suddenly remembers who Kawata is. The same desperate boy from Chapter 1 who was crying about wanting to lose his virginity. Shiranui notes she's never even talked to him before, and asks Senpai for his opinion, who advises that she's probably better off rejecting him. Taking his advice to heart, Shiranui decides to do just that, and immediately heads off to talk to him. Senpai quickly stops her. She asks if this means she can't reject him, and has to go out with him with sex in mind. Senpai quickly corrects himself, realizing he phrased his advice badly. He clarifies his point. While the letter's contents were questionable, it takes a lot of nerve to hand over a love letter. The boy poured his heart into it, so she shouldn't reject him just because Senpai told her to. Senpai admits he has no experience in this, but he believes she needs to tell the boy her own genuine feelings. Shiranui agrees, thanking him, and deciding that telling him how she truly feels is for the best. She then decides on her course of action. She will reject him by saying that she physically can't stand him. Senpai is left speechless, realizing his advice may have been taken a bit too literally. Later, as the clock shows it's time for their duties, Senpai walks down the hall. He sees Shiranui up ahead, who then turns and approaches him. She approaches him shyly, wanting to thank him for his earlier help. Shiranui explains that thanks to his help, she managed to resolve the whole confession problem by telling Kawata exactly how she felt. In the background, Kawata is in absolute shock as she bluntly tells him, "I'm sorry. I can't physically stand you." She comments on how oddly knowledgeable Senpai seems to be about love letters. He quickly denies it, saying he has no experience, and all his information came from a coworker who used a love letter to confess. Shiranui then asks if that means he's never gotten a love letter before, and he confirms he's never even been confessed to. Shiranui is genuinely surprised by this revelation, finding it hard to believe. She tells him that she was sure a guy as cute as him would have gotten a love letter or two before. The unexpected compliment catches Senpai completely off guard. Flustered, he tries to downplay it, saying he just spoke casually, as if she were his little sister. Shiranui happily replies that her father often calls her cute too. This comparison only makes Senpai more flustered, as he realizes he had no idea what to say about love letters. She goes on to explain that she doesn't know the first thing about what's common since she was always at home, but because he's teaching her all these things, she's able to learn. This leads her to a very direct and poignant question for him. "Why are you willing to teach me about all these things?" The question hits Senpai hard. Every time she asks him for a moment, he finds himself answering her questions without fail, but he doesn't know why. He finds himself asking the same question. Why does he always answer every question she has? He poses the question back to her, but she has no idea either. She says that's what she'd like to know, reminding him that he did something similar not too long ago. Pondering her question, Senpai internally admits that it's pretty fun to give her a taste of her own medicine now and then, watching her get flustered. As they walk off to the library room together, Senpai reflects that he doesn't really understand himself all that well. The next day, Shiranui reports back to Senpai with an update. The boy, Kawata, already gave another girl a love letter, though he was rejected immediately. Senpai can only sigh at the absurdity of it all. At the private Shinonome Academy, the library committee members start their day early. For Senpai, this often means long, boring hours at the reception desk, and he's so tired he can barely keep his eyes open. As he dozes off, he suddenly hears a soft good morning. He immediately thinks of his junior, wondering if Shiranui Rei is late for her shift. And right on cue, Shiranui appears, holding a book. She shyly looks at him and asks, "Senpai, do you have a moment?" Shiranui leans in and whispers in his ear, which startles Senpai. He blurts out, "Can you not whisper into my ears like that? They're really sensitive." Shiranui looks confused, and he quickly tries to backtrack, blaming it on being half asleep. He tells her she can speak in a normal volume, since it's just the two of them. But Shiranui innocently counters that he was the one who taught her to keep her voice down in the library, leaving him at a loss for words. Shiranui then cheekily suggests that if he's ever close to falling asleep again, she'll just whisper in his ear. This threat instantly jolts Senpai wide awake, and he frantically tells her not to. Once things have calmed down, he asks her what was on her mind. Shiranui holds up a book and explains she stayed up late reading the one he recommended, which makes him happy. Senpai listens intently as Shiranui mentions that some of the words in the book were complicated and confused her, and she was hoping he could explain them. She asks him about things like a batting center, bowling, and karaoke. Senpai is taken aback, realizing just how sheltered of a rich girl she is to not know these common places. He does his best to explain. He describes a batting center as a place to hit baseballs from a machine, bowling as a sport with a heavy ball and 10 pins, and a karaoke box as a place to sing popular songs. Shiranui seems to understand, reacting with an "oh" to each. However, despite her reactions, she admits she doesn't really get it. Senpai is exasperated, realizing it's too hard to understand from explanations alone. He looks at his planner, an idea forming. He notes that he has free time after school and impulsively asks her, "Want to check out all of the stuff later?" Shiranui gets extremely excited, exclaiming, "Yes. I absolutely want to go," right in his face. Senpai has a moment of internal panic, wondering why he's so nonchalantly inviting his junior out on what is essentially a date. He tries to give her an out, saying that even though he offered, she could ask one of her friends to go with her instead. But Shiranui looks at him with complete sincerity and says, "But I want it to be Senpai." Her directness leaves him speechless. And with that, the decision is made. After the school day ends, Senpai heads out of the library, having agreed to their after-school outing. Shiranui is already waiting for him, looking excited. He asks if she's been waiting long, but she says she just got there. She confirms she needs to be back by 7 p.m., and they decide on their first destination. Their first stop is a large entertainment complex called Round 2. Shiranui is amazed by the tall building, and Senpai declares they're going to check out all the places she was curious about. Inside, they ride an elevator high up. Shiranui is having a blast, marveling at the city view. She excitedly asks which activity they'll tackle first. They arrive at the batting center. After Senpai takes a few swings with impressive skill, a wide-eyed Shiranui asks if he's a professional. He shrugs it off and invites her to give it a try. He gives her the beginner's tutorial. Use the shortest bat, wear a helmet, focus on hitting the 80 km/h pitch, and not to swing too hard. Shiranui listens attentively, ready to play. With a determined shout, Shiranui swings with all her might, and completely misses the ball. It seems it's not as easy as it looks. Senpai steps in to coach her, correcting her posture. He advises her to keep her eyes open, her back straight, and not lean forward, getting quite close to her in the process of adjusting her form. Realizing how close he is, Senpai quickly apologizes for touching her without thinking, but Shiranui just looks at him and says she doesn't hate it when he touches her. Her innocent but forward comment once again throws him for a loop. Trying to move past the awkward moment, he gets her refocused on the game, telling her to pay attention and wait for the ball. She finally hits one and gets excited, but her celebration is cut short as he has to quickly remind her that the next pitch is already on its way. As they leave the batting cages, Shiranui says it was really fun, and that Senpai was cool. He admits that he was pretty good, explaining that he often comes to blow off steam by imagining the balls are annoying people, a thought that Shiranui finds a little scary. Next up is bowling. Senpai decides to show off a little, making a powerful and precise approach that impresses Shiranui. His shot wasn't a strike, however. Shiranui's innocent question of how many points is that feels like a stab to his heart. Trying to save face, he tells her it's her turn. Suddenly, the lights in the alley go dark, startling Shiranui. Senpai calmly explains that it's not a power outage, but one of the bowling alley's special steamy light strike game rounds, where they take a commemorative photo. The surprise lighting change didn't amuse Shiranui. Annoyed that they tried to scare her, she puffs up her cheeks and declares with a menacing aura, "I'm going to hit all of them." Senpai wonders if she has some kind of past trauma related to blackouts. Senpai gives her some pointers for her first time, but she's still fuming. As she lets the ball go with a roar, he comically identifies her mood as wrath, one of the 7 deadly sins. Fueled by her indignation, Shiranui's ball sails perfectly down the lane and scores a strike. Senpai can only stare, dumbfounded, at what he calls a strike of anger. Shiranui is ecstatic about her strike. A staff member rushes over, impressed, and offers to take their picture. She cheekily asks if Shiranui wants the photo taken with her boyfriend, causing Senpai to blush and frantically deny it. Despite Senpai's embarrassment, they get their picture taken. Shiranui holds up a sign celebrating her strike and flashes a peace sign, looking perfectly happy. The game continues, and Senpai is now fired up. He can't believe a beginner is doing so well. Determined to maintain his honor as a senior, he vows to teach her what it means to lose. But in the end, he is the one who is taught a lesson. The final scoreboard shows Shiranui as the winner, 58-55. She celebrates her victory, while he falls to his knees in defeat. Their final activity is karaoke. Shiranui is fascinated by the technology, asking about the camera that can stream them while they sing. Senpai begins to show her how to use the song selection device. As he explains how to use the tablet, he can't help but notice how close she's standing. He asks her if she often listens to music. Without hesitation, Shiranui cues up 5 songs at once. Senpai mentally calls this foul play, but as she begins to sing, he's pleasantly surprised. Her voice is incredibly cute, and she's completely absorbed in the performance. After she's done, he applauds, telling her she was great. He then decides to teach her a bit of karaoke etiquette, mentioning a hidden rule. He explains that you shouldn't put in multiple songs for yourself back-to-back when you're with others. She apologizes, but he tells her not to worry. He then admits that he really likes her voice and wants to listen more. He insists that he's fine being the audience for her today. But Shiranui, touched by his words, has a better idea. She suggests they sing a song together. After their fun-filled day at round 2, they emerge to find that it's already gotten dark outside. Senpai checks his phone and asks Shiranui if she'll be able to make it home before her curfew. On their way, Shiranui looks at the photo they took at the bowling alley. Senpai is still embarrassed by it and asks her not to show it to anyone, but she just playfully points out that he still made a peace sign for the camera. With a soft blush, Shiranui looks at the photo and tells him she will keep it as her treasure, a statement that catches him off guard. As they're about to part ways, Senpai asks if she had a good time. Shiranui turns to him with a bright smile and confirms that she had so much fun. She goes on to explain that she's always felt like life was incredibly long and that time passed agonizingly slowly. But today, because she had so much fun, time flew by. She declares it was the most fun she's ever had in her entire life. She looks up at him with a newfound understanding, telling him that their day together made her realize that life is actually really short. She looks at him with an uncharacteristically serious expression, telling him he was the one who taught her this. And so, she continues, she wants him to take responsibility. The word hangs in the air, leaving Senpai utterly frozen in shock. As Senpai is still processing the bombshell, Shiranui sees his panic and quickly clarifies her true, innocent meaning. With a hopeful blush, she asks, "Will you hang out with me again like we did today?" Faced with such an earnest request, Senpai is momentarily flustered. He takes a moment to compose himself, clearing his throat before giving her an answer. A warm smile spreads across his face as he agrees. "Of course," he replies, "as long as I can make time." He can't help but let out a fond sigh, thinking to himself, "I swear, this junior of mine." Just then, her bus arrives. With a happy wave, she says a final bye-bye, "See you, Senpai," and steps onto the bus, looking forward to their next meeting. As the bus drives away, Senpai waves goodbye and immediately pulls out his planner, determined to rearrange his schedule and keep his promise to her. However, as he scans his calendar, a dreadful realization dawns on him. With his packed schedule of school and work, the next free day he has is an entire month away. But the impact of their day together was immediate. Ever since that outing, Shiranui would often visit the batting center by herself, practicing the new hobby he had introduced her to. The chapter ends with a small flashback to the karaoke box. Senpai, curious about her song choices, had asked if she often listens to anime songs. She replied, to his complete surprise, that her father does, ending their first date on a perfectly quirky and revealing note. Here at Shinonome Academy, once the exams are over, the top 50 results for the second year first-term midterms are hung up in the hallways for everyone to see. A crowd of students gathers around the board, chattering about the results. Senpai breathes a sigh of relief. He managed to keep his first place, a necessity to maintain his scholarship and avoid paying tuition. Internally, he's celebrating, but on the outside, he keeps a cool demeanor as he walks down the hall. Suddenly, someone calls out to him. A girl with star-shaped hairpins and braided brown hair looks up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Senpai?" she asks, her finger resting on her chin. "Do you have a moment?" Senpai, who doesn't recognize the girl, is taken aback. He looks down at his junior and asks, "Who might you be?" The scene is set for Chapter 4, titled Senpai. Do you have a moment? Featuring the two girls, one with star hairpins and the other with a familiar circular hair clip, with the bewildered Senpai standing between them. The girl introduces herself with a bright smile. "I'm Shinonome Miku from Class 1C. Nice to meet you." She then connects the dots, asking, "You're the senpai that Shiranui-san always talks about, right?" When Senpai asks what Shiranui said, Mika bluntly replies, "According to her, you always have bags under your eyes and look like you're on the verge of dying." Mika gets to the point. With a backdrop of her failed exam papers, she explains that she failed pretty much all of her exams and has to retake them. She looks at Senpai earnestly and says, "And so, I was hoping you'd teach me until then." She justifies her request by adding, "Well, Shiranui-san told me. You always teach her about everything." Mika leans in closer, her expression hopeful and pleading. "Senpai, hey, teach me?" she asks again, making it hard for him to refuse. She quickly clarifies that she only needs his help until her retake exams. Seeing her beaming with hope, Senpai seems to reluctantly consider her desperate plea. As Senpai seemingly agrees, a familiar blonde girl peeks from behind a nearby door. It's Shiranui Rei, and she silently cheers, happy that her friend is getting the help she needs. The scene shifts to the library. Senpai, with a resigned look on his face, addresses the girls. "So," he begins, "that said, this is our first studying session in preparation for your retake exams." But Miku isn't alone. Shiranui is sitting right beside her. Miku asks, "Why are you here, Shiranui-san? Or am I just in the way?" Shiranui calmly replies that she wanted him to teach her too, and Mika cheerfully says she's fine with it. Senpai actually finds this more convenient. With both his juniors in front of him, he kicks off the study session. "All right, then let's start. What were the parts you didn't understand during your exams?" When asked what she didn't understand, Mika gives a cheerful, almost carefree smile and replies, "All of it, I guess?" Senpai is taken aback by her bluntness and how unbothered she seems by her complete failure. Senpai then turns his attention to Shiranui. "What about you, Shiranui-san?" he asks. He's puzzled because he recalls seeing her name on the results board. "Actually, you were first place amongst the first years, right? She had an amazing score of 798 points. Miku expresses her surprise. "You're brilliant, Senpai. You didn't know." She points out that since he ranked first among the second years, and Shiranui ranked first among the first years, they're the same. Deciding to get started, Senpai tells Mika they'll begin with math, her weakest subject. Struggling with the first problem, Mika questions its real-world application. "How is that going to help me in the future?" she wonders aloud. Senpai calmly advises her, "Let's not get ahead of ourselves and focus on the problem at hand, yeah?" Meanwhile, Shiranui asks if her answer is correct. Senpai checks her work and confirms it. With a shy blush, Shiranui compliments him. "You're a pretty good teacher, Senpai." He can only respond with a simple yay. As Senpai turns his attention back to Miku, explaining a problem, Shiranui puffs out her cheeks in a cute pout, seemingly wanting his attention for herself. Noticing her expression, Senpai turns to her. "Oh, something you don't understand, Shiranui-san?" he asks. She eagerly replies, "Yes. Senpai." Shiranui then delivers a completely baffling statement. I don't know which part one don't understand, so I want you to teach me which part confuses me. Both Senpai and Miku are left utterly speechless by her strange logic. Instead of being confused, Mika grabs Shiranui in a tight hug. "You're so cute," she exclaims, a wide smile on her face. "Are you jealous?" Mika proposes they become friends and use their first names. "I want to be friends. Can I call you Reichon?" Senpai tries to quiet them down, reminding them they're in a library, but Miku is too excited. As Mika squeezes her cheeks, calling her adorable, Rei desperately pleads, "Senpai, save me." But Senpai, recalling a sacred otaku proverb, decides the only thing a man can do when caught between two girls during a yuri scene is to simply enjoy the scenery. Still pondering Mika's words, Shiranui asks a question that brings the study session to a halt. "By the way, Senpai, what does it mean to be jealous?" Senpai offers a textbook definition about being frustrated with someone who has something you don't, but the explanation is too abstract for her. Rei is left even more confused, asking, "Then who am I jealous of?" Mika takes charge, offering to explain. "Let me do the teaching for once," she says to Rei. "So, Reichon, you wanted to take my position, right? That's what it means to be jealous. And it's quite the cute type of jealousy, too. Adorbs." Rei seems to finally understand, whispering, "I see." The realization dawns on Rei. She turns to Senpai and admits with a blush, "Senpai, it seems like I really was jealous. I realize that now." Senpai, completely flustered, can only stammer "all right," while thinking to himself, "What am I supposed to do with that information?" Mika then reminds everyone of the original purpose of their meeting. "Senpai, this studying session was made for me, right? Did you forget about that?" Senpai assures her he didn't. Mika then offers, "Well then, I guess I can teach you a bit of the stuff you'll soon be starting with. That all right with you?" Rei eagerly agrees. Senpai points out an error in Mika's work. "You got that formula wrong." Miku is disappointed, asking like this. Meanwhile, Senpai compliments Rei. "You really are smart." She blushes, barely managing a "ah really?" Despite their efforts, Mika breaks down in tears, wailing, "I don't get it." Senpai, with his arms crossed, tells her sternly, "Hey now, if you've got time to cry, then you've got time to move your hands." Rei looks on, startled by the outburst. 1 week later, a beaming Miku runs up to Senpai. "Senpai, look at this," she exclaims, proudly fanning out her exam papers. "I passed all of my retake exams." Senpai looks over her scores. "Just barely though, it seems." Mika doesn't care, stating that as long as she passes, nothing else matters. She gives him a huge, heartfelt, "Thank you very much," crediting him for her success. Senpai reflects that he can teach all he wants, but it's meaningless if the student doesn't work hard. Holding up her barely passing math test, Mika says, "So you could say this was all you're doing. You gave it your all, right?" Senpai stammers a thanks. Mika smiles brightly. "You're so kind. I like that about you." Senpai warns her not to blurt things like that out, or people will get the wrong idea. Senpai feels glad that Rei will be fine, but Miku interrupts his thoughts. "Well, there's a rumor going around in class," she begins, a mischievous look on her face. "Something about Reichon fooling around with an unsavory senpai." She leans in, "Tell me more." Miku explains that Rei talks about Senpai often. "Senpai did. Senpai was. Senpai then. Yup. And so, the implication is clear. Rei's constant, innocent mentions of him are the source of the rumors." Mika dramatically recounts the kinds of things Rei has been saying, all taken completely out of context. "Just yesterday, he taught me about virgins and sex. When I was on the toilet, he barged on and asked me how I felt about that. Yesterday, Senpai and I played with balls. It was intense." Senpai is horrified at how bad this sounds. Miku explains to the mortified Senpai, "It's all she's been talking about lately." So naturally, the rest of us were worried. Senpai tries to defend himself, telling her to get her mind out of the gutter, but he has to admit her explanations probably sounded very strange. Mika finally reveals her true motive. "That's why, as the representative, I figured I'd come to check just what kind of person you really are. And since she said you're always teaching her, I used that as an excuse." She admits that at first, he seemed like a gloomy person, but she realized he was a reliable senior who did his best to look after Rei. Mika continues her assessment. "But Senpai, I don't know how to feel about you teaching a random junior, just because she asks nicely." She then playfully asks if he had an ulterior motive. Senpai is at a loss for words. Mika says that while she thinks he's kind and open-minded, she's more into confident guys. She then surprisingly says, honestly, yeah, I might have, implying she might have had an ulterior motive herself. With a slight blush, Mika drops the bomb. I mean, you're the board chairman's daughter, right? Senpai calmly replies, I had a hunch. Miku is shocked that he knew. Senpai points out the obvious clue. Your family name's the same as our school. Shinonome Private Academy, Shinonome Miku. Miku is left speechless at his simple deduction. Mika playfully accuses him of helping her, just because she's the chairman's daughter, to earn a favor. Senpai jokingly agrees, saying he figured he could cash in a favor later. Mika calls him a horrible senpai, disgusting, and a lolicon, though Senpai thinks the last one is going too far. Mika declares him a bad senpai. And as punishment, she says, turning away with a smirk, you're going to teach me again sometime, okay? She threatens to tell her papa if he refuses. Trapped, Senpai wonders how he ended up in this situation, only able to agree to help if she fails her next exams. After she leaves, Senpai looks exhausted. He admits to himself that he did feel a bit guilty for his assumptions about her, but now he feels like he's talked too much and gotten himself into more trouble. Just as he's recovering, Mika pops back. She gets straight to the point, asking him directly, are you and Raychon not going out? Senpai is surprised by the sudden question. That came out of nowhere. And no, we aren't. From behind a wall, Ray is seen eavesdropping on their conversation. Senpai spots Ray hiding behind the corner. Shiranui-san? Why are you hiding over there? Mika cheerfully calls out to her. Ray explains she didn't want to interrupt, but admits there was something she came for. Senpai looks at her, confused, as she trails off, wanting to ask him something, but hesitating. Ray's original question escapes her, but her curiosity about what she just witnessed takes over. But anyway, what were you two talking about? She asks, looking at Senpai and Miku. Before Senpai can answer, Mika quickly cuts in, stopping him. Mika wraps her arm around Ray. Sorry, Raychon, but this is a secret between the two of us, she says with a grin. Ray looks confused. Senpai, catching on to Mika's game, wonders if she's doing this on purpose. He reluctantly agrees. Well, if Shinonome-san says so, I guess. A close-up shows Ray pouting, her cheeks puffed out in clear jealousy. A secret between the two of you, she mutters, unable to hide her feelings about being left out. As the day ends, Ray makes a blunt declaration. Senpai, I'm jealous right now. Miku, ever the playful observer, adds, listen, Shiranui, you shouldn't be so open about how you feel. Before squealing, gosh, you're so adorable, Raychon. The chapter begins with Shiranui Ray, who has just bought a new smartphone. She sits at her desk, holding the phone which displays her Rain Messenger app profile, her friend list currently empty. Meanwhile, the senpai looks on with a tired expression, only to be interrupted by a spiky-haired underclassman, who eagerly calls out to him. The senpai's mind flashes back to a memory of a girl named Kawata Makoto, who had hoped to start dating him. As he fails to recognize the boy in front of him, the underclassman introduces himself as Kawata, jogging Senpai's memory that Shiranui had mentioned him. Senpai finally remembers Kawata, but not in a flattering way, recalling him as that desperate virgin guy who sent a love letter. Kawata is mortified at how he's being remembered. Trying to escape the awkward situation, Senpai attempts to leave for a nap, but Kawata desperately tries to stop him. A voice inside Senpai's head, his sixth sense, warns him not to get involved with this guy. Having been stopped, Senpai sighs and asks what Kawata wants. As Kawata begins to explain, he gets flustered and shouts in frustration, while Shiranui, observing from nearby, bluntly calls him a lolicon. Senpai recoils in disgust as Kawata yells out his shocking request. He wants help losing his virginity, just like he believes Senpai did. Kawata is desperate for advice on how to get a girl. Senpai denies Kawata's assumption and tells him to go away. Kawata, however, grabs onto his jacket, begging for help as a group of girls in the background gossip and laugh at the scene. Just then, Shiranui approaches, asking Senpai for a moment of his time. Senpai, already annoyed by Kawata, seems even more exasperated to see her there, while Kawata looks on with a blush. Acting protectively, Senpai pushes Shiranui behind him, warning her that it's too dangerous to get close to the virgin monster drenched in lust. Shiranui, however, calmly replies that she already knows. With sparkling eyes, Shiranui completely misinterprets the situation, excitedly asking if this is what people call BL, or boys' love. Senpai immediately and vehemently denies it. Kawata panics, insisting he doesn't play on that field, while the gossiping girls get more excited. Determined to protect Shiranui, Senpai decides he needs to get rid of Kawata as quickly as possible. Senpai gives Kawata some surprisingly sound, albeit generic, advice. He tells him that being a virgin in high school is normal, and that if he wants a girlfriend, he should just find a girl he's interested in, and start by becoming friends. Senpai shoos him away, telling him to leave him alone and be happy with Shiranui. Misinterpreting the advice, Kawata cheerfully thanks him and runs off, vowing to ask for rain IDs. With him gone, Senpai finally turns to Shiranui to ask what she wanted. Shiranui proudly presents her new smartphone, declaring that she has finally obtained the combined knowledge of humanity. Senpai offers a slightly strained congratulations, remembering she didn't have one before. Shiranui blushes and thanks him politely. Shiranui then asks a peculiar question about the abbreviation for smartphone in Japanese, blushing profusely as she does. Her intense focus on this trivial detail leaves Senpai wondering about her strange behavior. Seeing Senpai's confusion, Shiranui hesitates for a moment before gripping her phone with renewed determination, ready to get to her actual point. With a shy and hopeful expression, she holds out her phone, showing the Rain app icon, and sweetly asks Senpai to please teach her how to use it. They move to a bench outside. Senpai confirms she has the app installed and suggests that the most efficient way to learn is by exchanging IDs first. Senpai patiently walks her through the steps of adding a contact, either by typing in a name or scanning a QR code. He notes that she is a quick learner, as she follows along easily. Shiranui successfully adds him as a contact, happily naming him Senpai. She thanks him, blushing, while holding the phone that now connects them digitally. While sitting on the bench, Senpai helps her respond to a test message. He notices her replies are a bit choppy but correct. He's puzzled by a strange donut-like emote she uses, asking if it came with the phone. Shiranui excitedly explains that the emote is a spirit character named Donkuan, rambling on like a true otaku. While Senpai is trying to process this quirky information, his own phone pings with a notification, drawing his attention away. He sees the message is from his dad, saved under the ridiculous name God of Darkness Sword, showing a picture of his lunch. Shiranui cheekily asks if she can reply with a photo of Senpai, which he immediately rejects. While internally deciding to change his dad's contact name, a different thought begins to form in his mind about Shiranui's behavior. Continuing their conversation, Senpai gets a feeling that something is off. He asks Shiranui if there was something else she actually wanted to ask, beyond just how to use the app. Senpai lays out the evidence for his suspicion. He points out that she's been acting strange all day, and he knows she already understood how to exchange IDs, had bought emotes, and had even texted her dad. Shiranui gets a bit flustered. Senpai concludes that he figured she must have had something else on her mind, but tells her it's fine if she doesn't want to say. However, he gently encourages her, reminding her that he promised to listen to all of her questions. He tells her not to worry, and to just ask what's on her mind. Shiranui looks up and tries to explain. She says that her main goal has already been accomplished, but she's not hesitating or unable to tell him. It's just complicated. Finally, she confesses the truth. Her goal was simply to ask for his Rain ID to exchange with hers. But when she tried to ask him directly, she found herself too nervous and just couldn't bring it up. Senpai is taken aback by this revelation. He can't quite understand why she would be so nervous about something so simple, admitting to himself that he doesn't really get it. Shiranui then gets worked up over her own actions, questioning herself loudly about why she couldn't just ask for his ID. Senpai inwardly sighs, recognizing this as her typical, over-the-top behavior. Despite her oddity, Senpai feels a sense of fondness, thinking that this is the best part about her. He concludes that she must have just been nervous because it was her first day using a smartphone and exchanging IDs with someone. Shiranui seems to agree, holding her phone and reflecting on the courage it takes to ask for someone's ID, worrying about being a bother or getting declined, especially for the first time. She then turns the question on him, asking if he was nervous too. He admits he was thrown off a bit. He then observes that plenty of people aren't nervous at all, looking over at some other students. Suddenly, a cheerful, new voice cuts in. A girl with reddish-orange hair and star clips in her hair, Shinano Miku, happily greets them, exclaiming that Senpai and Reichon are inseparable. Hearing that they were discussing the Rain app, Mika wastes no time and cheekily asks Senpai if she can have his ID too. Mika seems amazed that Senpai managed to get Shiranui's Rain ID, showing him her own chat history with Shiranui, who she says is much more energetic over text. She explains to a clueless Senpai that Shiranui is extremely popular with everyone, and the boys in their class would do anything to get her contact information. Mika then reveals a crucial detail. While Shiranui is so open with Senpai, in the classroom she's the complete opposite, reserved, quiet, and unapproachable. This new information stuns Senpai. Mika cheerfully confirms that she already has Shiranui's ID, making a peace sign. She recounts how Shiranui had excitedly told her about her new phone that very morning, and they had exchanged IDs then. Senpai is shocked to learn this. Mika gushes about how cute and excited Shiranui was when she asked. Senpai, meanwhile, is left completely speechless by this news. Senpai is now thoroughly confused. He can't comprehend why Shiranui had no problem asking Miku for her ID, yet struggled so much when it came to him. His mind starts to spiral. He begins to wonder if Shiranui's hesitation means that she secretly hates him, a thought that causes him to physically twitch in distress. The girls notice his odd reaction. He quickly brushes off their concern, telling himself it's pointless to ask Shiranui about it, as she probably doesn't even understand her own feelings of nervousness. Deciding to let it slide, Senpai tells Shiranui that from now on, she can just text him any questions she has, though he already predicts she'll prefer not to. With an earnest gaze, Shiranui clarifies her preference. Despite having a new phone, she says she'd rather come ask him in person. Especially, she adds, if it's something she'd like him to teach her. Senpai is quiet for a moment before simply accepting her logic. He's just relieved that she doesn't seem to hate him, and is willing to let her do as she pleases. But just as he settles into that comforting thought, the moment of peace is shattered by a familiar, desperate shriek calling his name. That voice is none other than Kawata, who returns with a red handprint on his cheek. He furiously accuses Senpai of lying to him, complaining that when he asked a girl to exchange IDs with the hope of getting intimate, she just slapped him. Senpai can only stare back, thinking, "What did you expect?" Kawata then glares at Senpai with intense jealousy, seeing him flanked by two beauties, Shiranui and Miku. Senpai, utterly fed up, tells him to shut up, while Shiranui looks on with her usual blank curiosity. Undeterred, Kawata then tries his luck with the girls directly, asking both Shiranui and Miku to exchange IDs with the same crude proposition. They both bluntly shoot him down as Senpai suggests he should probably stay a virgin for the rest of his life. Later, after school, Senpai and Shiranui are in the library. He explains to her that with a phone, she can now use internet searches to look up anything she doesn't understand, though he notes she doesn't seem very excited by the prospect. However, when she tries to search, a message appears on her screen. "Your internet is blocked." Senpai speculates that her dad probably set up parental controls, but Shiranui simply says it's fine. Instead of being disappointed, Shiranui looks up with a bright and determined expression. She happily declares that this just means she'll have to ask Senpai directly for help from now on too. The scene ends with Miku, who is easily approached by another boy from Class 1C asking for her address and Rain ID. The narrator notes that while boys would go through hell for Shiranui's ID, getting Mika's is surprisingly easy, a fact Mika herself doesn't seem to realize. In the classroom, Kurosaki's friend, Nogamosa, questions him about his relationship with the first-year student, Shiranui. Nogamosa points out they're always together, but Kurosaki denies their dating. Internally, however, he admits to himself that they do like each other to some degree, though he's unsure of the specifics. His thoughts are interrupted by a voice faintly calling for him. Kurosaki is startled awake in the infirmary by Shiranui, who is sitting over him. She asks if he has a moment. Confused, Kurosaki asks what's going on. Shiranui innocently explains that a friend from her class told her this cowgirl position would make a boy happy. He then questions why he's in the infirmary after classes have already ended. As Shiranui continues to move, Kurosaki, clearly exhausted, asks her to stop. He explains that he's been running low on sleep and had asked the nurse to wake him up after the lunch break, but it seems she forgot. Shiranui finally gets to her question. What exactly is love, Koi? Kurosaki, half asleep, completely misunderstands her, thinking she is asking about a koi fish, which is also pronounced koi. While Kurosaki asks her to get off him, Shiranui leans in closer, eagerly asking him to tell her what love is. Getting up, Kurosaki questions the timing of her sudden curiosity. Shiranui explains that her classmates brought it up, saying that it changes people. She recalls her friends gossiping about how love makes every day more enjoyable. With a determined look, Shiranui declares her desire to learn more about this love that has the power to change people. Shiranui begins to excitedly shake Kurosaki, demanding that he teach her about koi. He tells her to calm down, wondering to himself why she is so interested in a type of fish. Still under the impression they're discussing fish, Kurosaki begins his explanation by stating that a koi is red. This jogs a memory for Shiranui. He continues, explaining that because it's red, that must be why they say love, koi, tends to burn up quickly. The absurd imagery of a burning fish flashes through their minds. Taking him literally, a shocked Shiranui asks if you can eat love. Kurosaki, leaning into the misunderstanding, confirms that you can fry, grill, or boil love, much to her wonder. Trying a different approach, Kurosaki brings up baseball, stating that you can't forget about baseball when speaking of koi, especially in their prefecture. Shiranui is utterly confused by the connection. He clarifies that their prefecture's baseball team is called the Kois, a reference to the Hiroshima Toyo Carp. This leads Shiranui to a new, incorrect conclusion. If she goes to a baseball stadium, she'll be able to see love. Shiranui eagerly suggests they could go together someday. Kurosaki, lost in the conversation, non-committally mentions that getting tickets might be tough. She, however, thinks he's talking about something else entirely. Just then, Kurosaki overhears two girls excitedly talking about one of them scoring a home run with her boyfriend at the night stadium. The combination of words, something that can change people, burns up, night stadium, home run, and koi, starts to connect in his mind. The realization finally dawns on him. He turns to Shiranui and asks, "Wait, were you talking about love this whole time?" She confirms, confused as to what else she would have been talking about. Mortified, Kurosaki realizes that his exhaustion led to this massive misunderstanding. He internally panics, thinking to himself that a girl her age wouldn't be so passionate about actual fish, and that he knows even less about love than he does about koi. Still confused by his bizarre explanations about love being red and related to baseball, Shiranui earnestly asks again what love is really like. Feeling a sense of duty as her senior, Kurosaki decides to search for an answer he can give her, even though he's never been in love himself. He begins to explain, love makes it so. It makes your heart race, while also making it skip a beat from excitement. The world around you seems much more colorful if you look at that person. Shiranui seems to contemplate his words. As Kurosaki walks towards the door, he mutters to himself that he still doesn't really get it either, which isn't surprising. Suddenly, the curtain to the infirmary is pulled back. A woman with short, dark hair, the school nurse, appears. Seeing that they're awake, she chides them. "You're awake already. Then get on going home, kiddos." Shiranui happily exclaims, "Koga-sensei." The nurse greets her back warmly. Kurosaki, meanwhile, also seems to recognize her. Kurosaki calls out to the nurse as Kogane, and asks why she didn't wake him up. She casually apologizes, saying she forgot. She then dotes on Shiranui, calling her cute. Kurosaki realizes Koga intentionally let him sleep, having told the teachers he wasn't feeling well. Koga lightly smacks Kurosaki, telling him not to call her auntie, because she's still young. This interaction reveals their connection to Shiranui, who asks how they know each other. Kurosaki explains that Koga is Shiranui's aunt, her mother's little sister. Koga-sensei explains that she could tell Kurosaki was sleep-deprived just by looking at the bags under his eyes. As his caretaker at school, she says she couldn't ignore it. He tries to deflect by claiming he's had them since birth, but agrees that he can rely on her. To change the subject, Kurosaki suggests that Shiranui ask Koga-sensei her question. Taking him at his word, Shiranui turns to her aunt and bluntly asks, "What exactly is love?" Koga-sensei's cheerful expression instantly vanishes. Kurosaki reveals the punchline. "Sorry to burst your bubble, but Kogane's never experienced love in her life before." As he calls her cruel for asking, an enraged Koga-sensei yells at him to get out of her infirmary. Later, as they are walking home, Shiranui processes this information. She turns to Kurosaki and asks, "So you don't know much about love either, senpai?" Kurosaki confirms that he's never fallen in love before. Shiranui seems to accept this, noting that there are things even he doesn't know. Shiranui seems to have an idea and starts to ask, "Why don't we?" But Kurosaki interrupts, lost in his own thoughts about how crazy the world is. She decides to drop it. Shiranui suddenly stops, worried. She asks if she could be the reason he hasn't been getting much sleep lately, recounting how she bothers him during recess, on his days off, and even woke him up in a cowgirl position earlier. He quickly reassures her that it's not her fault. He angrily blames his manager at work for forcing him to work overtime, insisting that she has nothing to do with his fatigue. He apologizes for making her worry, but she says she doesn't mind. He then looks at her and reminds her, "I'm your senior, right?" He continues, explaining that as her senior, he feels it's his job to teach her about all sorts of things. He encourages her to keep asking him questions. Shiranui declares that she wants to learn about all the things that he doesn't know either. Kurosaki apologizes for not being able to help her with her question about love, but she thanks him sincerely anyway. A thought strikes Kurosaki. He suggests that since neither of them knows about love, perhaps they can learn about it together, at the same time. He formally proposes, as two people who don't understand love, "Why don't we learn about it together?" Shiranui looks stunned, and Kurosaki immediately wonders if his words could be mistaken for a confession. Shiranui doesn't answer his proposal. Instead, she asks a question of her own. "Why are you willing to teach me about all these things?" Her question makes Kurosaki reflect. He realizes the reason is simple, remembering the very first day they talked when she asked him a completely random question about the principal's hairstyle. He understands he's felt this way about her from the beginning. A small smile plays on his lips. Shiranui immediately notices and says, "Senpai, you're pretty funny, you know that?" "You smiled," she states. "I've never seen you smile before." He tries to deny it, but she insists he's not smiling now and playfully demands he smile one more time. Hearing this, Shiranui clutches her chest, a blush on her face. "Senpai, what could this be? It feels odd." Kurosaki asks her what's wrong, but she seems unable to find the words to describe the new feeling she's experiencing. She looks up at him, flustered and confused, admitting that she can't explain what this strange feeling is. Then, a moment of clarity hits her. She realizes something. "I feel like I know the answer now," she says. "I realized why I always ask you first whenever I have a question." With newfound determination and a blush on her cheeks, she looks at him and finally verbalizes the one thing she truly wants to understand. She finishes her thought with startling clarity. "I want to know more about you, Senpai." Her direct and heartfelt declaration leaves Kurosaki completely stunned, wondering about the reason for this sudden shift. Shiranui confirms, "You're going to teach me about all sorts of things from now on too, right?" Kurosaki agrees that's the plan, sighing to himself about the troublesome junior he's found. Curious about her declaration, Kurosaki flips the script and asks, "By the way, why do you want to know more about me?" Caught off guard, Shiranui pauses to think. With a bright and innocent expression, she exclaims, "That's a good question." Kurosaki is left stunned, realizing she's throwing his own evasive tactics back at him. She completely turns the tables, asking, "Senpai, why do you think I would want to know more about you?" Kurosaki is left speechless, unable to answer the very question he posed. The following day, a haggard-looking Kurosaki approaches Koga-sensei with Shiranui. He asks if Koga could teach Shiranui what a cowgirl position entails. A shocked Koga asks if they slept together, which he vehemently denies, bringing the chapter to a comedic close. On a rainy day, Shiranui happily walks under her umbrella, singing a little song. She recalls that rainy days always remind her of a mistake she once made. Senpai, walking behind her, overhears her strange song and wonders what on earth she's singing about. Chapter 7, During the Rain. Shiranui is pictured sitting inside a cardboard box, holding her umbrella as the rain falls around her. The two meet on their way to school. Shiranui cheerfully greets her senpai. He returns the greeting, noting her good spirits and asking if she likes the rain, to which she enthusiastically says yes. She explains that walking outside in the rain feels new and refreshing. Apparently, she was never allowed to go out when it was raining before. Senpai quietly takes this in. Suddenly, Shiranui stops and points at something in the grass, asking Senpai what it is. He looks over, and a sense of shock jolts through him. Lying in the grass is a porn magazine. Senpai can't believe his eyes. It's a DVD magazine featuring a cosplay model. Senpai panics internally, trying to calm himself down and wondering how such a thing could just be lying around, while Shiranui looks on curiously. He can't help but glance at it again. not wanting Shiranui's innocent eyes to see such filth. Senpai quickly tries to lead her away, saying they'll be late for school. She puffs her cheeks, clearly wanting to know what it is. She asks him why he's trying to hide it, her curiosity piqued by the cover's promise of revealing the secret of an active high school girl. Senpai internally admits that he's just as curious. Shiranui playfully asks him to teach her the secret. Flustered, Senpai tries to explain that his curiosity is a healthy, natural thing, comparing it to a time in his childhood when he wondered if the grass in his garden was edible. He continues his ramble, telling her that seeing the magazine has simply reawakened a curiosity and excitement he thought he had lost. Shiranui just stares at him, puzzled. With a serious expression, Senpai declares that it's a forbidden book, filled with the lust of all men, and it's too dangerous for a girl like her to get close to it. He insists they head to school. His plan completely backfires. The words forbidden book only make Shiranui's eyes gleam with even more intense curiosity. Senpai realizes he's made a terrible mistake. She then bluntly asks him if he also feels a forbidden lust for high school girls. Taken aback by her straightforwardness, he gives a vague answer, which seems to disappoint her. Senpai decides to drop the subject and urges them to go. As they walk away, he can't help but glance back towards the spot where the magazine lies. Shiranui reluctantly follows. As he walks, he makes a mental note of the location, telling himself he'll have to come back later to properly dispose of the garbage. As a good citizen, of course. Later that day, classes are over, but the rain continues. Senpai looks out the window, his mind wandering back to the magazine he saw that morning, correcting his thought from collecting it to throwing it away. He turns from the window and is surprised to see Shiranui still at school. She's standing by the entrance, looking out at the rain instead of heading home. He asks her what's wrong. She explains with a sad expression that her umbrella disappeared from the stand, so she was waiting for the rain to end. Senpai looks weary, thinking that this kind of thing happens all the time. He reflects that while losing an umbrella is nothing new to him, this must be a first for Shiranui. The thought makes him reconsider the situation. He remembers how she was having the time of her life dancing in the rain just that morning, a stark contrast to how perturbed she looks now, just staring up at the cloudy sky. Senpai tries to explain that it happens all the time. People accidentally grab the wrong umbrella. He calls this the karma of humans. Shiranui, in her typical fashion, simply repeats the karma. He tells her that it just means she was unlucky and doesn't need to feel bad. Shiranui seems relieved to hear that. But Senpai presses on, asking, "Still, it's frustrating, right?" He gets a bit carried away, suggesting the thief should step in dog poop 5 times in a row before catching himself. He then pivots, telling Shiranui that the real lesson is that with the right preventative measures, she can protect her umbrella next time. He suggests several ways to protect it, using a flashy red umbrella that stands out, writing her name on it, or even putting a curse on it. Determined, Shiranui declares she'll protect her umbrella no matter the cost, and Senpai agrees to help her. Senpai then points out that if her anti-theft measures work, she'll have to wait for the next rainy day to test them out, meaning she can't go home in the rain now. Shiranui stands silently in the rain, pondering this. Looking out at the rain, Shiranui agrees, saying that she's looking forward to it. Changing the subject, Senpai offers her his own umbrella, so she can head home. Surprised, she accepts it with a thank you. She asks if he's sure, and he explains that he has a basket full of umbrellas left behind by people at his part-time job. But Shiranui clarifies that wasn't her concern. She's worried about how he will get home now. He tries to brush off her concern, saying he'll be fine running home, and that sometimes guys just want to run in the pouring rain. Shiranui, however, exclaims that he'll catch a cold, her worry catching him off guard. Just as he is about to leave, Shiranui tugs on his sleeve to get his attention. She points to a pair of girls walking together and asks what they're doing. Senpai explains they're simply sharing an umbrella. He explains the simple logic. Sharing allows 2 people to fit under one umbrella. For Shiranui, this is a revelation, as she had no idea an umbrella could be used for that. Senpai adds that sharing an umbrella is usually something only 2 girls or a couple would do. Hearing the word couple, Shiranui's mind starts turning, and she suddenly declares she'd like to try it herself. With impeccable logic, Shiranui proposes a new experiment. If she shares an umbrella with him, she can learn about love, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Flustered, Senpai tries to refuse, insisting he'll just run home, but she calls out to him. With a sniffle and a heart-wrenching expression, she asks him quietly, "Do you not want to share an umbrella with me? That badly?" Defeated by her puppy dog eyes, Senpai gives in. They begin walking home under a single umbrella, and he immediately thinks to himself that this is even more embarrassing than he could have possibly imagined. Seeing that her senpai's shoulder is getting soaked by the rain, Shiranui instinctively snuggles up closer to him. Startled by the sudden proximity, he grips the umbrella handle tightly. He asks what she's doing, and she innocently explains that she just wanted to keep his shoulder from getting wet. Flustered, he thanks her and awkwardly asks if his love experiment is working yet. Shiranui looks up at him and admits she still doesn't really get it. As they continue walking together under the umbrella, Senpai reflects to himself that, as he thought, he really does love rainy days like these. The following morning, the rain has stopped, and a rainbow fills the sky. Senpai finds himself back at the spot from yesterday, only to see that the porn magazine has vanished without a trace. In a final, comically innocent observation, Shiranui questions why minors aren't allowed to look at the magazine if it's about high school girls. She then casually points out that the girl on the cover wasn't actually a high school girl anyway, leaving Senpai utterly baffled. Continuing from the previous chapter, Senpai recalls a dream he had about his junior, Shiranui. In the dream, she innocently asks if he wants to know a high school girl's secret. As a form of self-punishment for having such thoughts, he's been running 10 laps every morning. As he walks down the school hallway, he spots a girl in the distance. A girl with long dark hair, tied with ribbons, approaches Senpai. She has a serious expression as she calls out to him, asking if she can talk for a moment. Senpai is momentarily confused, wondering who this girl is as she stands before him with a determined look. The chapter title is revealed. Chapter 8. Senpai, can I talk to you for a moment? The girl with dark hair is shown holding a book titled Everything in the World, while Shiranui stands behind her. The girl introduces herself as Yujiri Hina, the class leader of 1C, the same class as Senpai. She confirms that she's heard about him from Shiranui, and Senpai notes the slight, awkward pause in her speech. Yujiri leans in, telling Senpai that she has something she wants to ask him. Yujiri gets straight to the point, asking Senpai what he thinks of Shiranui. The question makes Senpai flash back to his dream and his various encounters with the quirky junior. After some thought, Senpai gives a simple, honest answer. He thinks of her as a cute junior. Yujiri, however, doesn't seem to buy it and calls his answer an obvious lie. Yujiri's expression turns accusatory. She claims to know everything, even the pervy looks she believes Senpai gives Shiranui, and accuses him of feeling lust for his junior. Senpai is shocked by her baseless accusations. Yujiri continues her tirade, listing off all the unnecessary misdeeds she's heard from Shiranui, including bizarre claims like forcing her to roll Senpai balls and barging into the bathroom. Senpai tries to defend himself, but Yujiri is relentless. Yujiri reveals she learned that men are the embodiment of a one-time chance from the internet. Senpai questions her source, and Yujiri clarifies that her knowledge actually comes from a different, more reliable source. The source of her information is revealed, a shady-looking book titled Everything in the World. She declares that as the class leader, it's her duty to protect her classmates. Having presented her evidence, Yujiri issues a stern warning to Senpai, deeming him dangerous and ordering him to stay away from Shiranui. Senpai flatly refuses her order. Yujiri is completely flustered by his defiance, unable to believe he would disobey an order from the class leader. She repeats her accusations, calling him a desperate perv. Just as the argument is heating up, Shiranui herself appears in the hallway, calling out to Senpai. Yujiri freezes, her angry demeanor instantly vanishing. Senpai points out that Yujiri is the class leader, and that her intervention is pointless if she doesn't talk to Shiranui directly. Shiranui looks on, confused. Overcome with a sudden blush, Yujiri is unable to face Shiranui. Yujiri, flustered and embarrassed, shouts that Senpai is the incarnation of lust before dashing away down the hall, leaving Senpai and Shiranui behind. Senpai and Shiranui watch as Yujiri flees. Senpai notes that she isn't running, just walking very fast, as expected of the class leader. Shiranui observes that the class leader ran away again. Other students comment that Yujiri always runs away whenever Shiranui gets close. The incident leaves Shiranui wondering if the class leader hates her, but Senpai starts to think that might not be the case. Trying to reassure her, Senpai tells Shiranui that he doesn't think Yujiri hates her and gives her a comforting pat on the head. He adds that a good girl like Shiranui wouldn't be hated, and that Yujiri seemed worried about her. Senpai immediately regrets his actions, realizing he slipped into the gentle mood he uses to comfort his little sister. Shiranui, misunderstanding his gesture, asks if he is the embodiment of lust. Senpai, exasperated, lets out a sigh while Shiranui puts her hands on her head, confused by the pat. Later, on the rooftop, Senpai asks Shiranui what she originally came to ask him. However, true to her nature, she has already forgotten, completely distracted by the encounter with the class leader. Senpai is left speechless, once again baffled by her short attention span. The conversation drifts off as they stand on the rooftop. Later, unable to find her, Senpai decides to look for Shiranui in her classroom after school. After school, as Senpai is near the first-year classroom 1C, he is spotted by Shinano Miku, a cheerful girl with orange hair. She calls out to him while he is talking to another girl about club activities. Shinano is overjoyed, assuming Senpai came to the first-year classrooms just to see her. He clarifies that he was looking for Shiranui, who Shinano informs him has already left. Disappointed, Shinano says she also wanted to talk to him, prompting Senpai to warn her about being careless with her words. Just then, Shinano spots the class leader, Yujiri, who is organizing her bag nearby. Yujiri turns to face Senpai, surprised that he came to find her. With a smug look, she asks if he has finally decided to stay away from Shiranui, as she had ordered. Yujiri confidently states there's no need to worry, as she, the all-knowing me, will take over teaching Shiranui from now on. However, Senpai cuts her off, telling her to be quiet because he's now angry. Yujiri is left stunned and speechless. Senpai turns the tables on Yujiri, throwing her earlier accusations back at her. He asks what she thinks of Shiranui, accusing her of having lustful looks and hoping for a chance with their junior. He points out that her face turned bright red the moment Shiranui appeared during lunch break, which is the look of a person who is aroused. Yujiri flusters, denying everything and citing her authority as class leader. Senpai concludes that Yujiri must truly dislike Shiranui, a conclusion Yujiri vehemently denies as ridiculous. He then challenges her, asking why she ran away from Shiranui earlier if she doesn't hate her. He reveals that Shiranui always feels down after being avoided by her. He tells a stunned Yujiri that she doesn't know anything about Shiranui because she has never even talked to her, a fact he heard directly from Shiranui. With a serious expression, Senpai tells Yujiri that while ignorance isn't a sin, her ignorance has hurt his cute junior, and for that, he can't forgive her. He insists that she must understand the consequences of her actions. He once again asks Yujiri what she really thinks of Shiranui. Yujiri struggles to answer, stammering that it's not like she hates her, but something else. Finally, Yujiri breaks down and confesses. Blushing intensely, she admits that whenever she sees Shiranui, her chest tightens, her face gets hot, and she can't speak. She describes Shiranui as a pure, innocent angel, and that it would be weird to talk to her normally. Senpai finally understands. Yujiri is completely in love with her. To Yujiri's horror, she realizes that Shiranui has been peeking around the corner the entire time, having heard every word of her heartfelt confession. Shiranui asks why Senpai is there, and he admits to hiding and listening. Just as Yujiri tries to flee, Senpai grabs her by the neck, stopping her from running away from Shiranui as she always does, explaining that her actions hurt Shiranui. Forced to face her, Shiranui slowly and shyly walks towards the trapped and mortified Yujiri, calling out her title as class leader. As Shiranui gets closer, Yujiri can only pant in embarrassment, while Senpai and Shinano watch the tense, awkward scene unfold. Looking directly at the flustered Yujiri, Shiranui makes a simple, sincere request. Be friends. Won't you, with me? The directness of the request shocks Yujiri. Her first instinct is to run away again, but she only manages to dash a few steps before stopping. Shiranui approaches her again, and this time, Yujiri nods in acceptance. Meanwhile, Senpai prays for a good outcome. Yujiri accepts, and Shiranui is happy they became friends, even though Yujiri still ran away at the end. Senpai advises her to be patient. Shiranui gives him a long, thoughtful stare. Finally, Shiranui asks Senpai what the phrase, lewd hopeful gaze aiming for a chance means, a question to which he has no answer. His only thought is his unwavering resolve to protect his cute junior from anyone who might hurt her.